Welcome to Firing Line with William F. Buckley Jr.
Most certainly, and this is why I had invited you to participate with me in this rather enlightening discussion, informative discussion, to provide that broader context for more informed examination and analysis, and referencing these colleagues of yours, notable evolutionary biologists and neurologists upon whom you rely. In fact, on the afternoon of January 31st, 2020, Allison had sent an email to your email address stating, and if I may quote, some of the features, potentially, which he places in parenthetic reference, look engineered, and that Eddie, Edward Holmes, Bob Gary, Mike Warby, and myself, referring, of course, to himself, all find the genome inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory. These are evolutionary biologists, we must assume. And on February 2nd, one day after you had, on Saturday, I might add, dispatched a very urgent email, marked urgent, to your deputy, Hugh Hoggenclaws, a point to which we may return later. Gary had written the following words: I really can't think of a plausible natural scenario where you get from the bat virus, or one very similar to it, to NCOV, where you insert exactly 4 amino acids, 12 nucleotide, that all have to be added at the exact same time to gain this function. And you don't change any other amino acid in S2. Sounds all rather very specific and technical. He wrote, continuing, I just can't figure out how this gets accomplished in nature. Obviously quite surprised, and had described what he had examined as, and I quote, stunning, referencing the alignment of the spikes at the genome level. Certainly a discussion far beyond the experience and training of many, even in our audience, in terms of the sciences. But can you help our audience understand these comments in the proper context, of course? Dr. Bauchi, please.
Of course, and I believe Dr. Anderson had provided a perfectly reasonable explanation regarding what may have appeared to have been inconsistencies during his interview in July 2021 with reporters from the New York Times. Dr. Anderson had explained, and very well I might add, that at the time, based on limited data and preliminary analyses, they had observed features that appeared to potentially be unique to SARS-CoV-2, because they had not yet seen these features in other related viruses from natural sources, and thus were exploring whether they had been engineered in the virus. Specifically, those features included a structure known as the furin cleavage site that allows the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein to be cleaved by furin, an enzyme found in human cells, and another structure known as the receptor binding domain that allowed the virus to anchor to the outside of human cells via a cell surface protein known as ACE2.
Yes, ACE2. That is the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 for our listening audience, not quite informed after 3 years of evolutionary pressure. Please do continue, Dr. Priddy, Dr. Priddy, won't you please?
Yes, and when Dr. Anderson had stated that what he had examined was inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory, which may sound concerning to others outside of the scientific community. As he very well explained, this was a reference to the features of the SARS-CoV-2 that they had identified based on early analysis that didn't appear to have an obvious, immediate evolutionary precursor. The features in the SARS-CoV-2, you see, Bill, that initially suggested possible engineering were identified in related coronaviruses, meaning that features that initially looked unusual to us or them weren't. It's really their first exposure to these particular features on the coronavirus. And you must recall that many of these analyses were being completed in just a matter of days while they were working around the clock because of a very, very urgent crisis.
Indeed, Dr. Priddy, the esteemed Dr. Priddy. All quite very reasonable. However, from what I have been able to gather from his prior published scientific research, this appears to have been Dr. Anderson's very first works with coronaviruses, which, for starters, would have made him a very peculiar choice for taking such a leading and prominent role at particularly this point in the crisis, much less serving as the lead author of what would later become the definitive and most quoted research paper on natural evolution hypothesis. In fact, the primary piece of work upon which the World Health Organization had relied when it had revisited the origins. I believe that you would agree, Dr. Priddy.
Yes, I would agree. And as I have said, I keep an open mind until we definitively prove one. But still, I would make the point that the most likely explanation still is a natural evolution from an animal reservoir to a human. While there may have been a lab leak, we still have to keep an open mind to all possibilities. But myself and many notable vaccinologists, virologists, and evolutionary biologists still feel, we together feel, that the more likely explanation is from an animal host to a human.
This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.